They say a woman's body tells the story of her life. If that's true, then mine has always been a battlefield, especially between my husband's cruel words and another man's gentle praise. My husband used to love every inch of me, or maybe I just wanted to believe that. Over the years, his love turned into comments. Then the comments turned into disgust. And then, silence. But there was one thing he always mocked, the thing that another man would come to worship. He said my pussy lips were too big. Said they looked used up. Unattractive. Ugly. And I believed him. Until someone else showed me just how beautiful I really was. I used to think marriage meant safety. Security. A lifelong kind of comfort. And in the beginning, that's what it was. My husband, Darren, he was charming, funny, dependable. For the first few years, we were best friends wrapped in a marriage license. But as time passed, something in him changed. Or maybe it was always there. I just didn't see it. He became colder. Distant. Less affectionate. And the worst part? He began criticizing my body. Quietly at first. Little comments here and there after sex. You could trim more often. Maybe you should look into surgery. And one night, after we'd made love, or rather, after he finished and rolled over, he sighed and said, "God, your pussy lips are so big. It's like they're hanging out more every year." I froze. I laughed it off. But it was like being cut open with a whisper. I started showering with the lights off. Avoiding mirrors. Wearing black underwear just so I wouldn't catch a glimpse of myself. I wanted to disappear under the weight of shame. He said it so many times, I started saying it to myself. Over and over again. I work in a mid-sized marketing agency. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me distracted. That's where I met Ethan, a graphic designer with crooked dimples and the kind of attention span that only sharpened when he was around me. He wasn't like Darren. He wasn't cold or distant. He noticed things. My new earrings. The way I organized my folders. Even the way I smiled less on rainy days. "Rain get you down?" he asked one day, casually leaning on my desk. "Something like that," I replied, hiding behind my monitor. Over weeks, our friendship grew. He was kind. Gentle. Thoughtful. And he looked at me like I was worth looking at. The first time he made me blush, I realized how starved I'd been for warmth. Not just touch, but presence. A man truly seeing me. One late night, we stayed after hours working on a pitch together. It was pouring outside. The office was nearly empty. The tension was heavy, not loud or obvious, but simmering, quiet, electric. I stood up to stretch, and my blouse rode up slightly. I went to adjust it, but Ethan's voice stopped me. "Don't," he said. "You always hide like there's something wrong with you." But there's not. I laughed nervously. My husband would disagree. That's when he tilted his head and said it. "I'm not your husband. If he saw what I see, he'd worship the ground you walk on." I froze. My hands trembled, and I sat back down. But I couldn't look at him. He leaned in just a little closer. "Especially that part of you he mocks, the thing he doesn't appreciate. He's blind. You don't know what you're doing to me." That was the moment I knew. I was slipping. And I didn't want to stop. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow. Like rain soaking into earth, quiet, deliberate, irreversible. Our first time wasn't planned. It was another late night. We were both tired. Vulnerable. I told him about Darren's insults. About how I hated that part of my body. About how I felt, broken. Ethan looked at me, his voice low and serious. "Your pussy lips are beautiful. Soft. Strong. Real." And for the first time in years, I cried. He didn't laugh. He didn't hesitate. He kissed me gently. Slowly. And then he undressed me like he was opening something sacred. When he reached down to touch me, he paused and whispered, "Don't be ashamed of this. It's the most honest part of you. And I love it." That night, I felt like I belonged in my own skin again. I wish I could say that was the only time. But it wasn't. It became a rhythm. A secret heartbeat in my otherwise numb world. At home, Darren barely touched me. When he did, it felt more like a chore than a choice. Still, he'd find time to remind me how unattractive he thought I was down there. Always the same phrase. "Why does it look like that? It's like a turkey hanging out." I started flinching before sex even began. Holding back tears. Biting my tongue to get through it. But with Ethan? It was different. He'd go down on me like it was his mission. Every kiss, every moan, every breath, was praise. Worship. I could see it in his eyes, the hunger. The reverence. The love. I lived in two worlds, one where I was too much, and one where I was just right. And guilt began to grow. One night, Darren came home early and smelled something different. Not perfume. Not sweat. But, me. Changed. He didn't say anything at first. Just narrowed his eyes. Later that night, during an argument about nothing, he shouted, "Maybe if your pussy didn't look like a roast beef sandwich, I'd want you more." That was it. I snapped. "You don't get to shame what you haven't even touched properly in years." He looked stunned. And I said it. Not in a scream. Not in tears. In a whisper. "Another man calls it beautiful. Another man wants it. And he makes me feel things you've forgotten how to give." He didn't leave that night. He didn't cry or beg. Just silence. Like I'd confirmed what he always suspected but didn't want to face. I moved out 2 weeks later. Quietly. No drama. Just a bag, a cab, and a goodbye note. Ethan was waiting outside my apartment. Not with promises or fairy tale endings. Just a warm coat, a small smile, and open arms. I don't know where this road leads. I don't even know if Ethan is my forever. But I know this. I will never again let someone shame me for the way I was made. And if anyone ever asks me why I did what I did, I'll say this. Because I was tired of being unloved by the one who promised to protect every part of me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't need judgment. I just wanted someone to hear the truth. So if you're listening, maybe you've been where I was. Maybe someone made you feel like your body was too much or not enough. Let me tell you this. Your body is not a punchline. Your softness is not a sin. And your pleasure is not a privilege, it's a right. If this story touched something inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Share your truth. Or simply say, "I hear you." Because sometimes, the deepest scars are the ones no one sees.